Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, coaches around the world, welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. It's your host, the Road Dog, with none other than the magic microphone man, Karl Bryan. Shoots, welcome to the program.
We had a few microphone issues today, Shoots. So those listening aren't going to know it. That was a gong.
Oh my God, a few microphone issues. Just like the Leafs just had a few years of not making it past the first round. Come on.
Exactly. And by the way, on that note, I am not using a microphone, so if the audio is not up to the standard that you have become used to, I will apologize right here. But here we are.
You know what, bud? Any tone that they can hear your voice in, I'm sure they're just happy to learn from it. How about that? That's probably one of the nicer things I'll say to you.
Shoots.
Buddy, should we dive in or look for I know we try to keep these not too specifically dated, but it is Stanley Cup playoffs, and that's pretty exciting times, especially for you right now. So I'm not sure if you want to tell us who's going to win the Stanley Cup this year, other than the Toronto Maple Leafs, because we all know that ain't happening. Even though I did hear the new favorite.
Do you know who the Stanley Cup favorite is?
I did hear that. Yes, I want to cry about it, but yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs. Shoots. Boston Bruins packing. So you heard it here first. The Leafs, it's their year.
And how about the Kraken? Good for them, by the way, knocking off the chin.
Very good. And by the way, remember last week, somebody who nobody else was talking about and who I think has a good shot, Dallas Stars. They're on their way. Their goalie is insane. That's all I can tell you.
Well, my bigger question is, are you going to be moving back up to Canada and possibly to Calgary? I hear that the Flames now have a coaching vacancy.
Yeah, hard no. Hard no.
Hey, just real quick before we get into our first question, one of our insiders just actually wrote in and said, I'm looking for an article from KB about the top 50 things restaurants should do to increase profits. Where would you find that?
I think it's basically when I started my one thing, like my daily email, very early on, I wrote, might have been day 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, and that like really early. I just wrote like 50 ways that a restaurant could profit, or you could guide a restaurant towards profitability and a more successful business. So if you just Google Karl Bryan restaurant case study, it will absolutely pop up. And it's I've been asked this, so it's 2 different days. So if you click on both of them, it's not poetry in motion. You're going to have to ad lib a little bit, but it's there. That's where.
Okay, beautiful. Now to kind of, I guess, restaurants, small.
Can I jump in real quick right there? Just real. So where that comes from is that if you, and again, those that have been, listen to the podcast for yonks, you've heard this, but those that are new or haven't followed us, this will be good. I think if you introduced me to a coach with a lack of leads, and that would be most, I say I will introduce you to a coach with a lack of confidence. Because believe me, there is no shortage of business owners out there looking for a little bit of direction, looking to become a little bit more profitable, looking for some good advice and mentorship that they could actually rely on. So a solution that we recommend with consistency is that rather than, again, you make a list of 50 business owners to go to do, you should absolutely do that. But what I would do is get a pen, get a piece of paper. I believe that's significantly more powerful than, your iPad, your phone, or your computer, or your laptop. And write down with a pen and paper 50 ways to help, and then just a landscaper, a painting company, a construction company, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and you will find that, and again, read the restaurant case study, you'll see that it's not, goal setting. It's not time management, although those things should come into it. They're very important. more like really hard, tactical, make money really soon. Like, if you go into the average business owner, and you Google this, but the average business in North America has net, not gross, but net margins of 10%. So they make 100, they keep 10, they make 1,000, they keep 100, et cetera, et cetera. So if you go and increase their prices by 5%, and then you decrease their profits or decrease their expenses by 5%, you don't hire anybody, you don't, learn anything new, you don't do any courses, you don't, form all kinds of partnerships, you don't build a funnel. What you do is you raise your prices and raise their prices, lower their expenses. You pretty much, and there are a couple little nuances that I'm not going to bore you with, but you double their profitability. Boom. Right. So go in, and the question is, could you do that? And no such thing as a bad student. There's only a bad teacher. It's just a matter of whether you influence them in the way, because believe me, they will all be able to do that in some way, shape, or form. But you have just doubled. You didn't double. Remember, like the software that we created, it's not revenue profit. It's not revenue acceleration software. It's profit acceleration software. There's a reason. Profit, profit, profit. Businesses are trying to grow so that they can become, the business owner can, fill his bank account. And the truth is that very seldom happens. Companies fall over from growth and success more, or certainly as much as they do failure and lack of action, right? It's an absolute fact. And then if you were to press me on why, because they don't follow their margins as they grow. And you've got this business, again, let's just use net margins of 10%, which are not impressive by any measure. And then they grow. How do you grow? You hire somebody, you buy Facebook ads, you spend the money on this, you spend money on that. You have a couple of jobs to go sideways, by the way, which is going to happen. What does that do? That eats into your margins. And suddenly 10 becomes 9, becomes 8, becomes 7. And then you're growing, growing, growing. And then a staff member leaves, your top sales guy, and they take a bunch of work from you, or what have you. Do you know what I mean? And then you become vulnerable. When you have a business at $1 million with X margins, and then you go to 3 million with slimmer margins, what happens is the company becomes vulnerable. At 3 million, you're way more vulnerable than you are at 1. More staff, more jobs, more that could go wrong. So anyways, I just want to make sure. So writing down 50 ways to help a landscaper, and again, outside of just goal setting and time management, getting a little more granular, I think is an excellent exercise for every business coach, every consultant, especially the newbies trying to find their way. So,
hey, on that real quick too, because we all seem to interchange grow and scale, right? You hear that a lot. And I think that might be a good little nugget for somebody to have up their sleeve, sort of in their back pocket when they're talking to a prospect or somebody. And when you're like, well, hang on, are you looking to grow or are you looking to scale? Well, isn't that the same thing, Karl? Isn't it?
No. Okay, I literally wrote this on Facebook this weekend. So which I wouldn't normally do, but it was just somebody that just felt like it was important in the spirit of what they were saying as a quote unquote influencer type, right? But anyways, growth is when you grow and your expenses come with you. Scale is when you grow and expenses stay relatively the same. Example, Facebook could throw in 1 million people today into Facebook and they don't need to hire a bunch of people, right? The same way that we can go to our software and I could plug in, countless people today into the software. And there's not, there's not a massive amount of expense in each incremental user. So scale is when you grow and expenses stay relatively the same. Super important, and people don't understand that. And I think, agree with you, Road Dog. It's a very important lesson. They should, if I'm a coach, a mentor, something that I wish somebody would have told me. So there you go.
So when you say the expenses, relatively stay the same, is there sort of like a rule of thumb? Is it 20%? Is it 10%? Or is there a point where it's like, no, now you are in growth mode, not scale?
I'm sure there's people that are way, more advanced than me, but I'm just going to say 5% as a frame. Let's just use 5%, right? Your expenses can grow by 5%, but if they're growing like 20%, you'd fall into growth.
Got it. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit here, because again, coaching is, especially small business owners, it's all about leadership, right? And I'm just wondering, can you share some of your secrets to leadership? And again, I guess to set a frame for you, then it would be working with small business coaching clients.
Yeah. Okay. Secrets to leadership. That's it.
Yeah, for small, and again, specifically because I'm sure working with larger corporations and all that stuff, that's a whole different animal because now
Yeah.
you've got many more egos and personalities involved. Let's just say, because again, the bulk of our audience would be small business coaches. So let's stick to that frame of just specifically
Yeah.
secrets to leadership for small business coaching clients.
Yeah. So a company doing 500 grand gross, right? Okay. Well, all leadership begins with self-mastery. You can't lead others if you can't first lead yourself. So I would introduce you to something called personal development. I think is important. It might sound a little platitudinal, but I think there's magic in that. Like you got to know the difference between impressing people and influencing them. And again, this is literally, like I see it on Facebook just so consistently, right? Like again, there's a difference between impressing people and influencing people. Impressing them changes. Okay, so how would I describe? Okay, impressing them changes what they think. Like, oh wow, cool car. Influencing them changes what they do. Right. So again, impressing them changes what they think. Influencing somebody correctly will change what they do. Think about that as you're, guiding, coaching, mentoring, a Sherpa for business owners. Um, and influence and inspiration come from the person, not the position. Again, in the past, leaders are those who know the right answers. Today, leaders are those that know the right questions. Again, if you ask the right question, if you define the problem correctly, and the way you do that is by asking the right questions, the answer becomes borderline obvious. Do you know what I mean? Like it becomes like, oh, of course, right? But that sounds good. That sounds easy. I assure you that is more difficult. And that is why, again, our software, the foundation of it is based on a Q&A process. And by the way, and so Tony Robbins. If you listen to Tony Robbins talk, he basically is asking questions for the entire time because thinking is nothing more than asking and answering questions to yourself. If I'm throwing questions your way, I'm actually directing your thinking, right? Um, and you'll always accomplish more cooperating with people than you do competing with them. Might sound like in a leadership position, but I could show you a lot of leaders, a lot of bosses, a lot of managers where there is a little bit of like a competing element to it. It doesn't need to be explicit. It doesn't need to be like Road Dogg and I competing. It can be, think of like an aura. Think of culture that over top. People talk about culture in business. Again, it's like oxygen. You can't see it, you can't touch it. You just know that it's very, very important. If you want to have good culture in a company, you need one thing, and that is rules. And then what do most people push back on? What do they think that they don't want? They don't want rules. But the truth is, the richest people in the world, the most successful people in the world, the people with the happiest lives in the world, generally speaking, they abide by, they've created a set of rules for themselves. They've created a set of rules for their family, and they abide by them. And that doesn't mean that like military style, to be clear, because I can just picture somebody that really pushes back on their what they believe, but it doesn't. That what I mean. Rules don't necessarily. Sometimes it's that there are no rules around this individual situation, dynamic, what have you. Anyways, the definition of a leader, and I tell you this, this is my opinion. This is my definition. Not going to find this in a dictionary. But what I think is that taking vision and turning it into reality, that is the making of a leader. And then how do you do that? And the answer is it's complicated. It's difficult. There's exactly no, point A, point B, straight line. It is a horrific set of, ups and downs, up and down, ups and downs, and, managing psychology talked about earlier here, like managing oneself. It's like, the goal, if you want to take vision and turn it into reality, like your best. Again, don't do your best. It's just not good enough. The job is to do what it takes. And that might be a 16-hour day. That might be a 7-hour week 7-day week once in a while. That might be 66 months without a holiday. That might be a 1 month holiday on an island with no phone so that you can totally decompress. That might be going to a 7-day retreat with total silence and meditating and not speaking for like 7 days because that's what you need. You know what I mean? But the vision into reality is anything but a straight line. I get actually somebody put this on my personal profile, but I put this: when you're happy, you hear the music. When you're sad, you hear the lyrics. And I don't know, how is that relevant. I just think being able to rise up 30,000 feet and look down and like see that. You know what I mean? Like again, and I think, we're speaking to people and they have heard that. We're like, oh my gosh, I remember when I was really, really down, really, really out. It's a breakup, it's a death, it's a loss, it's a bankruptcy, it's a business issue. And like all of a sudden you're listening to the songs, like, oh my God. And you'll know this, Road Dog, right? With two young girls. I'll tell you one thing. I drive my daughter to school like every day, right? We have a thing. So we'll practice, spelling and some math. And then when she gets done, right, we hit the music, right? And boom. And as soon as she's done, you hit the music, but we don't get music until she does, what what I mean? Like gets 10, like say it's a spelling test, 10 out of 10 on her words. Um, the lyrics of these songs, right? Like every lyric of my daughter's sitting there talking about champagne, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, all these lyrics are completely inappropriate for my 9-year-old daughter. Like, what the hell is going on? Anyway, so maybe as a father, you start hearing the lyrics. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, and leading, you're following strategy. When you're following tactics. And if I were to just frame that up, think checkers versus chess. You want to be playing chess, not checkers in business. You want to be seeing that entire playing field, but that sounds good. Sometimes you got to get into the weeds and you get highly, highly tactical in order to take a step back and, get back to strategy. But anyway, so that's, if you're not following overarching strategy, you're going to get yourself into trouble. But that's my answer. Shoots. I don't know. What do you think? Leadership for small businesses?
Yeah, I like it. We also kind of had I don't know if it's a similar question, but a question that came in. I'll just read it to you here. Is it more effective to take on the personality of a Stoic when coaching?
Ooh,
What do you think of that?
Yeah, more effective. Okay, first of all, I love the question, by the way. But I would encourage anyone to be them. So let's start with that. You know what I mean? So are you you know what I mean? Are you naturally like a Stoic? If the answer is a hard no to that, then I would say this is a terrible strategy. You know what I mean? You need to be you. That being said, I think that everyone could do with a little bit of stoicism, right? So that, like Tim Ferriss, Bill Belichick, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. What I'm trying to do is name like some really influential people that have accomplished really, really cool things in kind of a cool way. Those I just listed. Those are all celebrated Stoics. Um, and then, okay, so what is Stoicism? And by the way, I am not the expert on Stoicism. Certainly something that I think about and try to, bring into my own world. But that being said, I'm so far from perfect. It is scary in this regard. Outer, if you pressed me definition, or to describe it, outer calmness and inner strength would be a Stoic. And then if I counter that, it's like, okay, well, what isn't a Stoic? And that's someone that will say they wear their heart on their sleeve, right? So, which is a way of saying that, I'm emotional and I show people that. So, but again, if you're a real emotional person, trying to be hardcore Stoic, I think is a bad idea. But that being said, should you maybe wear your heart a little bit less on your sleeves and maybe take a step back and be a little bit more cautious or strategic, or pause before you react? And I would dare say that might be a good idea. Got to ask you. You got to ask your client, right? And like amateur CEOs plan for what could go right, and then professional CEOs plan for what could go wrong. Think about that, right? And again, that is a Stoic. And what do I? The best, like the best teachers will tell you where to look, but not what to see, right? Like again, I don't know, like and there's less than emotional type of a more emotional person might be more inclined to say road dog. It's right there. I don't see how you don't see X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Like this person's stealing from you. This person is not working. This person is, charging you for their 9-hour day and you were getting 3.5 hours. It's right there in front of you. Um, Anyways, rather than, come up with a way to, show data like Time Doctor or something like that, depending upon the dynamic, right? Then it's like, okay, well, it's right there, right? Um, and I'd encourage any coach to not underestimate the difficulty of getting people to move out of their comfort zones. Remember, what do they say? Your new life is going to cost you your old life. Your client's new life that you're trying to guide them towards, and they've told you that they want, is going to cost them their old one, right? They will fight for comfort. And remember, comfort zone, that is the most addictive drug in the world. They will say, like it's caffeine, it's sugar, whatever. I'm going to say that it's comfort, right? But actually, I read a quote on the weekend, and it said, "What did it say? What did it say?" It said, "Don't fear failure. You should be fearing comfort. Don't fear fail." And again, it's something like this, right? I don't even know who it was. It was just like something on Facebook a business coach wrote. I thought was very clever. But yeah, don't fear failure, fear comfort. And I was like, ooh, that's really, really good. So, anyways, translation, inner strength is important in the game of coaching. So I do think that Stoicism is something. If you're a natural Stoic, high five and congrats. I think that's really good. But that being said, and by the way, should you just be all like, stoic on everything? There's a flip side of that too, right? Where you should be, super positive and thinking about what could go right. You know what I mean? Look, there's a little bit of both. Um, you know, Look, stoicism. Here's maybe okay. So stoicism, like failure is part of life, and you got no choice over it. Road dog doesn't. I don't. You don't. Nobody does. Right? Warren Buffett. Right? Um, learning learning from failure is an option, and then the question is, are you accepting? Are you trying to avoid it? You know what I mean? You're trying to avoid change, trying to avoid failure. Are you dancing with it? And I'm going to suggest that you should just be accepting failure is going to happen. When Bill Belichick designs a play, he doesn't expect the running back to go through the two hole and run straight to the end zone. You know what I mean? He's not unrealistic. And by the way, that does happen one in every 100 times, right? But that's not what he's sitting there. He's thinking about what's going to go wrong. What happens if he drops the ball? What happens if he gets smoked straight away? What happens if he, he gets knocked back a little bit? How do they adjust the play, right? So be thinking about, what, again, professional CEOs plan for what could go wrong and amateurs plan for what could go right. I think there's also a little bit of a balance there, of course. Here's a question: do you learn more when you fail, or do you learn more when you win? I think we all know the answer to that. So this is what I'd be thinking about. So should you be, if you learn more when you fail, clearly that's absolutely your answer. Should you be avoiding it? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is that a good idea? And the answer is hard no. I'd also just say like my thing is I take a walk. I walk a lot. Think maybe Steve Jobs might have influenced that. He was well known. If you had a meeting with Steve Jobs and it was an important one, he would often take you for a walk in a park. So that's just something that I personally like. I've got something big to think about. I'm not like real meditating is something that just doesn't work as well for me as it does for others. Maybe that's an indication that I have got to just dig in and become better at it. I, do it a little bit, whatever, but I'm just not good at it. I am much better at having call it a big problem, something I want to think about, something I got to deal with. I've got something, there's something. I think about it and then I go for a long walk, and it works really well for me. And I believe in Stoicism that is actually part of, I believe that's like a thing, right? Um, and what about like, so Stoicism would say you're on Facebook, right? And, like you and I have a friend, right, Road Dog? And if you notice, what happens is there's somebody and like all they're doing is cheering against everybody. And then like you're not completely clear who they're cheering for. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? Personally, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm good with, people come in and go, but you know what I mean? There is no doubt on who I am cheering for. And my personal opinion is maybe that's a good thing, right? And so what am I getting at? Oh, think dispute over teams winning in the NFL, teams winning the Super Bowl, a bad call that the referee makes. Way probably better example for those listening, but a political dispute, a personal disagreement, some client screwing you over, or whatever, hard conversation. Like, should you be spending a lot of time killing brain cells over something? Let's assume that was a thing on Facebook, right? That you read, and a friend of yours has a very different political persuasion from you, and you just can't believe it and feel slighted, like, my heavens, right? Is that something you should be doing? Killing brain cells? And then also, should you be engaging in it? And then what if you have said something and maybe made a mistake, right? Do you think you should be beating yourself up on it? And Stoicism would dictate that would be a horrific idea. How you handle minor adversity might not seem like a big deal at the time or as a frame, but the truth is, if you listen to Warren Buffett, the way you do small things is the way you do big things. So you should really be cautious to let those things become runaways. And we've both seen it. At least I've seen people literally just light themselves on fire, metaphorically, right? Like, just over some crazy stuff. You think about, like, election time. So whatever Stoic would say, my heavens, don't. Inner strength, you know what I mean? Outer calm. What do you think? Should you be going and worrying about that stuff? Hard no. But again, you got to hold yourself. Like, how would you get there? You got to hold yourself to a higher standard, but also, shoots, like, very important, not to an impossible one, right? Perfection is the lowest standard on earth. Anybody if you introduce me to a perfectionist, I'll introduce you to somebody who doesn't get a lot done, right? So like, on your deathbed, you are going to wish that you were more forgiving of yourself. So I want to invite you to start doing that now, instantly. Right. And, like, here's something that I've learned, from, hockey and playing in some pretty big hockey games with some, big, whatever on the line. You got to be careful. Like, so I am a forward, right? Like, when I play hockey, I would generally play center. I play center. It's important that if I have a bad winger or somebody that I don't trust on the wing, trying to play his position and my position is just what weaken both of our positions. My job is to do my job today. If you're in a company, and that, a defenseman might be a better example. You got a defenseman who's a little bit weak. So then you forgo your offensive, or like your offense, like the ability to score goals, to stay back and help him. Like, again, in the grand scheme of things, is that going to be a good idea to win the hockey game? And generally, and there's always nuances to this type of thing, that's going to be a horrific idea. So what they will say, Bill Belichick is famous for saying, is just do your damn job. Don't worry about anybody else doing what they're talking about. Good, bad, different. That's my problem. I'm the coach showing leadership. You just worry about what you're doing, right? So, okay, so slightly different direction. Those that pick things up really quickly tend to be notorious for skipping the basic lessons and the fundamentals. And then, so what do we say on this podcast, like, all the time? Talent wins over consistency, right? So you got to be consistent. The best thing is to be consistent, like, be talented, but be consistent. But if you give me the option of consistency over talent, I'm looking for consistency. Remember the superpower of a successful entrepreneur, like really successful, multiple 7, 8 figures, 9 figures, one word: conscientiousness. A conscientious individual is somebody who can basically accomplish good and big things. Somebody without conscientiousness, and I would dare say that, without meeting the two individuals, but you introduced me to a Stoic and then somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve, the Stoic is generally going to be more conscientious, generally speaking, right? So maybe it's back to coaching and mentoring. When a good coach sees potential, they want it to be fully realized, right? Truly great coaches also won't know that natural ability and quick comprehension can be dangerous, right? Apathy sets in. So it happens in sport constantly, where the elite get overtaken by somebody who was inferior to them, either a short time or some time ago. And then what do? My question is, do they fight for it? Do they go, that's not happening, screw that, I'm better than that individual, I'm better than that guy, I'm better than that player, I'm better than XYZ? Or did I cry in their Cheerios like people, fighting on Facebook over politics ridiculously and start, going in the other direction? And I think, and by the way, and then sometimes to make them feel a little better about themselves, guess what they do? They hit some booze at 6, 7, 8 o'clock. How does that work out the next day, right? And it becomes this psychosomatic, you know what I mean? Like this, negative spiral. And the next, again, because small towns are filled with players that were better, quicker, stronger, etc., than the guys that made the NFL, the NHL, the PGA, Major League Baseball, etc. And winning in anything shoots psychology. It's a 1-0 bloody one. So what I just described is one person managing their psychology and digging in, and then the other person not managing their psychology and letting a negative spiral kind of take shape. So, but Stoicism is great as a frame for a coach, coming back to the question. But what's really important is that you are you. Road Dogg is unapologetically himself. I'd like to think that I am unapologetically myself. That's what I think you got to be doing. You got to, but then there's also, you're good enough, quote unquote, but you're nowhere near good enough, right? Think about that. Like, you're good enough, but you're nowhere near good enough. What? So if you have no stoicism in you whatsoever, I'm going to challenge you to say that might be a really, really good thing. If you're too much of a stoic and too pessimistic and too black and white, there's probably a little bit of, you could probably let people in a little bit closer, and a little bit of, I don't know, like a little bit of emotion might be a good thing for you. So, and expect greatness, expect great things, have high expectations, and those, guided by you. That's a good thing. So shoots that, stoicism, I think, is a wonderful thing. Is the nuts and bolts of it.
And a bit of a rabbit hole. Perfect. So I'm going to ask you one more, and then we'll wrap it after that. But we get this one, I think, a fair amount, and that is: do you approach selling? And again, all we have to do is just change the numbers for the basic questions we get. But in this particular one, do you approach selling coaching to a $10 million business differently than you would to a $350,000 business?
Ooh, yes. And yeah, I think that's important, Shoots. I don't think anybody, a lot of coaches listening are not going to $10 million companies. They're going to $1 million companies. So would I go to a, $1 million company differently than a $350,000 gross revenue business? Or would I go differently to a $5 million business than I would, a $1 million business? And the answer is yes, but I would have my frames, and I have my frameworks, and I'd have my game plan. So remember, you don't sell to companies, you sell to individuals, right? Companies don't make decisions, people do. That's critical. And then, by the way, people buy things for what? People buy things for emotional reasons, right? So, and fear doesn't rule the world. What does? We've said it many a times on the podcast. I've said it on Facebook a zillion times. I've said it in my emails, countless. Fear doesn't rule the world. Envy does. Right? Or actually, greed is also something that I think if we line up 100 people, they would think that greed was there, right? Envy over greed all day long, twice on Sunday. You know what? Okay, so you sell to individuals, not companies. And I get a saying like, not I have a saying, no doubt the saying is, you've heard this a million times, no doubt, different reasons, but no one wants to get left behind, right? As an exercise in influence, there's so Tony Robbins. I talk about Tony Robbins all the time, but I really think he has the best content in the industry. I'm not like in love with Tony Robbins, and I think that there's a lot of people that you should also learn from in very different ways. But I do think Tony Robbins has some great content if you are a coach, and I can tell you that he has an infomercial, and I think it's just it's personal power, right? Maybe personal power 1. But the first personal power. So that infomercial, that's what it is, infomercial, right? Just a sales thing that he played over and over and over on TV. But it took Tony Robbins effectively from a nobody to $100 million coaching brand. Again, Andre Agassi, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky, Oprah, you name it, basically got him access to the elite of the elites, and into billionaires' homes and offices, etc. I dare say that it did it in record time. I want to, I've watched it, well and truly a number of times. And what I saw is the many ways that he manufactured the impression that you, as in the person watching, that hasn't already purchased his thing, in this instance, it's personal power, um, had totally missed out on what everyone else, more specifically the celebrities that you saw in the video and the superstars and the pro athletes, again, like Andre Agassi, etc. The elites and basically every person you admire were already participating in, right? Remember this sage advice. Nobody wants to be left behind. And again, I would encourage you to even write it down, maybe revisit it a few times as you're thinking about influencing people. And if you're listening to this, you're a coach. It's our job, right? So in trying to influence, let's just say a prospect as a frame, make them feel like they're getting left behind, right? Even the alpha males, the elite of the elite, the guys driving the Porsches and the Lamborghinis, definitely the $10 million companies, they'll wilt under this kind of social slash emotional pressure is the right word, right? But they really want it. Like again, it's envy, right? And let me tell you, when done correctly, high end coaching clients will literally whip out their credit card rather than ask how much. Like, I mean, there'll just be an afterthought. So I think practicing this, understanding that if this is new to you, that frame is new to you, you're probably going to suck at it, but you will get better over time, right? And you want to have them, quote unquote, kind of racing to catch up, right? So, and by the way, back in the day, I used to sell $100,000 coaching programs way back when in the early to mid 2000s, and this is a big part of what I was back then. That was a lot of the framework, and that's how I got these six-figure coaching deals done, right? And by the way, in addition to emotional factors, right, that everybody has, and what are those? Think greed, envy, wrath, pride, to be lust in there, anger, fear, certainly love and hate. I'm picturing the criminal with the knuckles shoots, right? Love on one knuckles and hate on the other, right? But the affluent, the successful, the rich, the ones that you really want to, quite possibly the ones you really want to sell to, they've got a particular set of emotional factors, and I think some of them like might surprise you, and you might want to delve into this. Something there's a Dan Kennedy book that I believe I got learned some of this. Dan Kennedy is very good at doing what I'm describing. Again, better than I will ever be. But like insecurity, fear of being found out as a faker, um, desperate. What is it? Like a faux pas. Desperate desire not to commit a faux pas. Um, Wanting to be in vogue, like they want to be today rather than yesterday, right? So again, think artificial intelligence in there. Um, Feeding, sometimes when somebody becomes really successful, there's a bit of emotional emptiness there. Like again, you'd think that somebody, if you have not achieved wealth, you might find that as somebody becomes, rich and buys that car and buys that house, that they have a lot more friends, right? I can tell you categorically that somebody who has gone on to achieve a lot of wealth has less friends than they did before they had the wealth, right? So that can you think about that. That might create a little bit of what emotional emptiness, and you dare be correct, right? And then not to mention they want to kind of give themselves gold stars, and I believe that language would come straight out of Dan Kennedy's mouth. But they want to give themselves gold stars, and they want to know like what's the point of being rich? Like they're kind of trying to answer that. What's the point of all of this work? What's the point of, you go and buy that, the Porsche and the Ferrari and the Lamborghini and the Lotus and the big house. And I'm going to tell you that after the check clears and whatnot, there's is this all, like Tony Robbins talks about this? Is that all there is? Like, is that it? You know what I mean? Now I got the car, it's actually not that fun to drive. Or there's some other factors that come into it. But anyways, so the affluent are insecure in many ways. It's part of how they earned the money. Understand what I just said. The affluent are insecure, and the reason they become affluent, wealthy, successful by financial measures is that they were insecure, right? So that does not go away. And I'll tell you also, shoots, they worry about going backward, about losing their money, losing the status, losing the privileges that come, with the bigger house and the cooler car and maybe the membership to the yacht club and the boat, etc. Um, so yeah, that's what I want to say, shoots. And they're actually aware of the okay, so the wealthy are aware of the aggravations, the inconveniences, the financial difficulties that are endured daily by ordinary people, right? Because they used to be one, right? And they lose a few winks every night worrying about waking up, being, back there again, right? So, and the best brands in the world will make you feel, right? Like Coke makes you happy, Mercedes makes you successful, Disney makes you proud, right? I just finished going on a 7-day cruise, right, with my family, and there's just no question that I thought about that when I was actually there and kind of thinking, and it's just there's no question. There's a Disney makes you proud. Just take that. So the best marketers in the world can do what? They pull on your heartstrings, right? And I'll tell you in closing that so if you introduce me to a high margin product, Rolex, Louis Vuitton, Ferrari, Burberry, name them. There's lots of them, right? Apple, right? They do one of three things. There might be a fourth, but I can't think of it. They make you feel like a better parent. So if you buy this, you're a better parent. Make you feel like you're closer to God, or they make you feel like a higher status individual. So introduce me to a company with, again, just write down the top 10 brands in the world by your estimation, right? I trust you that you're going to be spot on. And by the way, the list that you make is going to be similar to the list that Road Dog's going to make, which is going to be similar to the list that I'm going to make, because we know what brands these are. And again, I just listed a few. What they do, and they have what's referred to as luxury margins, right? Which not a lot of companies do. If you think about what Apple has done, Apple have produced a Ferrari of phones, and then they do Toyota type volume. Apple gobsmacking what they have managed to do in and around branding. They've broken every frame that was ever written, ever created, right? But forget that. So we don't look at anomalies in business. We always look at percentages. If you want to help your client build something really, really special with massive margins, and remember, Warren Buffett, he wants to buy something for $1, wants to buy something for a penny that he can sell for $1 that is habit forming. Okay. So if you have a high margin product, it makes you feel like a better parent, makes you feel closer to God, or it might not be God for you, but it's your thing. Make you feel significantly more spiritual, maybe is the way I should be wording that for some. And then make you feel like a higher status individual. And I would encourage you to really think about what I just said. I think that there's a massive marketing lesson in that I still, by the way, am trying to, I haven't worked it all out. But power in that, shoots, power in that. So that's my answer, bud. That's my answer.
Okay, so just to put a bow on this episode, because you covered a lot, like if somebody was to pull one thing out and implement that into their practice today, what do you think would be the one thing?
Shoot. I feel like we talked a lot about a strategic, what's the ultimate competitive advantage? Again, something we've covered in the past, we'll cover it in the future. What's the ultimate competitive advantage, right? Most people, if I open them up, they're going to say communication, then it's going to be lowest prices, then it's going to be the best margins, all kinds of different, tactical and some things that they think, hungry audience. The ultimate competitive advantage is the ability to see the entire playing field, right? So we talked to should you be a stoic when coaching? And the answer is, maybe there should absolutely be an element of stoicism that goes into a coaching relationship. I think absolutely. But if you are a super emotional person that wears their heart on their sleeve, become a hardcore Stoic is just going against who you are, and that's not going to work well, right? So like that's like strategy. What was the first question, Shoot? So it was something like leadership. What are some of the leadership begins with what? Self-mastery, right? If you can't lead yourself, you're not going to be able to lead others. Just think of that. You see this in families all the time. Like mom, dad, they're not managing themselves. They're struggling to manage their kids, right? Kind of a 101. And then, what else was it, Shoot? So it's selling a higher, when you go to a business owner, do you sell differently to a small guy, small potatoes, than a larger one? Still not sure I answered that very well, Shoots. But anyways, but high level strategic thinking. And I think that's always you want to play chess. You're playing checkers and I'm playing chess. I'm going to destroy you. That's an important part of business coaching. If you're a client, and then so it's not just, it's you as the coach, consultant, the Sherpa, but you got to help your business owner do the exact same thing. But remember what I said earlier, at some stage, they're completely addicted to what? Their comfort zone. So you're like, yeah, but so like, so the restaurant case study, right? Like, it's like, here's the tactical step. Here's what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. Why won't they bloody do it? Right. And it's addicted to the comfort zone, man. People want to avoid change, and they need to learn to dance with it. They're fearing failure when in actual fact, that's where all the lessons are. That's where the magic is. Right. So anyways, Shoots, I think that strategic approach was kind of what's standing out in my head. Hope that helps.
Perfect. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to yet another episode of Business Coaching Secrets with none other than the man, the myth, the Maple Leaf legend, King Karl. And if you're not on the inside getting asked the pre-show, or you'd like more information on profit acceleration software or on Lash Coaching, visit focus.com and learn more and subscribe today. And again, if you enjoyed the podcast, please share, like, review, do all the things that you can do to show us some love, and we'll see you in the next episode. Remember, everybody, progress equals happiness. Take care.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.